Hi, I'm Jonas from Eclipsource, and in this short video, I will demonstrate to you how you can extend the AI-powered Theia IDE with project-specific information to increase the reliability, precision, and efficiency of our AI coding agents. Now, let me directly dive into the demonstration. Let me go full screen. This is the AI-powered Theia IDE. I've opened an existing code base. That's actually the code base of the Theia IDE itself, but that doesn't really matter. This code base has around 200,000 lines of code, so it's a realistic, large existing code base. Now, what I want to do in this demonstration, I would like to execute a simple coding task first without any improvement, without any project-specific information, and then show you the difference when I do that again after I added project-specific information to the context. All right, so the coding task that I want to do is I will use Theia Coder, that's our AI coding agent, and I will keep it simple. I will just ask it to create some tests and now we'll select any arbitrary existing service. So for example, this service. It doesn't matter at all what this service does because I will not go into the details of the test. I basically want to show you how it generates that and how I can improve this. Now let's observe what Theia Coder does. Obviously, it looks at the file first, then it retrieves some additional context information, for example, the interface and so on. And now we can observe that it looks at the project structure and tries to find out whether there are existing directories for tests and so on, because it doesn't know that, right? It has to retrieve this information from scratch. And now finally, after it looked around a bit in the project and retrieved the context itself, it starts to implement the test. That will take a while. While that runs, I can show you I'm currently for the Coder agent using Claude 3.7. I could, of course, use any other model too, but that's the model that I'm currently using. All right, so now it's done. Now what we can see here, and that's interesting, this created a test. We can actually look at that. It doesn't look too bad. But what I can directly see, because I'm familiar with the project, is that it used the wrong file pattern. So it used .test.ts, but in our project, in the Theia project, we used .spec.ts, and it also generated a TS file. And finally, it created those tests in a test directory where we have the convention to place the test files in the same directory as the class under test, right? So now, even if the test cases here are good, it didn't adhere to some conventions that we have in the project. Now, there would be now several ways to improve that, right? We could prompt the agent to look more around and make sure it finds other examples and basically make it more intelligent. But that would take a while. And if we think about it, if you would ask a coworker to implement a test in your project, you would probably not tell them, okay, and just explore the code base yourself to find out how that is done. You would point them to some examples, right? Some best practices. And you would like to have under control which are the best practices and not just some arbitrary test, which might be not the best test in the project. Now, how can we achieve that? Now, let me actually close this. And let me close this. So if we look at the prompt of Coder, and the nice thing here is all system prompts of all agents in the Theia IDE are completely open, and as a user I can even edit them. So this is the prompt. Since version Theia 161, we added a new variable at the end of this prompt, and this says prompt project info. Now what this variable points to is a prompt fragment, and a prompt fragment is basically something that you can add to an existing prompt, and this will be resolved depending on the project, right? Now, if you add such a project info prompt fragment to your project and then open it in the Theia IDE, the content of it will be automatically placed here, right? And how do you add such a prompt fragment? It is as easy as adding such a file to your workspace. I've already done that, so I can open that in this project. So let me open this project info. And this is how it looks like, right? So it's just basically a plain markdown file or prompt template in this case, but you can also use markdown files that describe some explicit information about the project. Now, this looks very simple, But if you evolve this file, you will learn what are generic things about your project that agents typically struggle with, right? And instead of always letting them find out that this information by browsing or investigating your workspace, it's much more efficient to just tell them, right? It's like a README for AI agents. And now what I want to do is I will augment this with some additional information. I've prepared this. So what I do is here, I add a new section, test file references, and I say when writing new tests, refer to the following files to see example tests and ensure consistency. And then I provided two tests, one for the backend and one for the front end, because Theia is a client server application. And these are files that I selected where no, okay, these are following the best practices. And I also say or tell the AI tests are located in the same directory as components under test. Right? Okay, now let me close this and this. And now let me just run the exact same query again, right? So Coder, create tests for, and let me select the same file. I think it was token service impl, right? And then just hit enter, and let's observe what it does now. So it starts very similarly. It looks at the same file. It looks at the interface again. And now what's interesting here, now let me check if there's any example test files. And now it directly retrieves the test file that I've provided. So I've actually now defined, okay, this is my best practice. This is how I want tests to look like. And you can see it was much faster now because I explicitly provided this information, and it's already implementing the test now. And let's look at the result. And now we can see it didn't do these two mistakes anymore, right? So it used the right file pattern and it placed it in the same directory. So basically it immediately followed my best practices. All right, let me show myself again. We hope you liked this video. In the description of this video, you'll find more links where you can download the AI-powered Theia IDE and also link to an article that describes more in detail how you set up this project info file or a similar file for your own project to augment the AI agents with project-specific information. Now, the last thing before I close that I obviously want to do, and I hope you're curious, does this test actually work now? So let me look at it. Yeah, it looks good. And let me now just apply that. And let's execute that. So let me build this package like this. And now let's execute the test. If I don't know how to execute the test, I could also use AI for that. Like this, tests. And it would suggest me, okay, npm test. And let's look at that. And there were a couple of other tests, but let's see. Yeah, here are the new tests and they execute correctly. Of course, I don't know whether these tests are really good, but what you can see is that Theia Coder was now capable with a very easy prompt to generate tests that adhere to the project guidelines and are directly embedded into the infrastructure, which is pretty nice. All right, with that, again, I hope you enjoyed the video and see you hopefully in the next video.